For context, I come from what you'd call a business family. My grandfather started this manufacturing company back in the 70s that makes specialized industrial parts. My dad took over in the 90s, and it's always been assumed that my older brother Lincoln and I would eventually run things together when dad retires. I actually have an engineering degree and used to work there handling product development until about 8 months ago. I left the family business after a massive fight with my dad and Lincoln. They kept shooting down all my ideas for modernizing our product line, calling them unnecessary risks and fancy toys nobody wants. I was basically stuck doing meaningless busy work, while Lincoln got all the real responsibility. After my divorce last year, yeah, that's a whole other story, I decided I needed space from all of it, so I took a break to work on some personal projects. So yesterday, I'm in my driveway working on my old Subaru, which honestly runs perfectly fine, but my family acts like I'm driving some piece of junk because it's not a brand new BMW like Lincoln's. I'm changing the oil and doing some maintenance while listening to music when I hear tires screeching on the pavement. My dad's black Mercedes pulls up, and he and Lincoln jump out looking like they're ready for a fight. Dad immediately starts in on me, saying I'm still driving that dump and living like a loser at 30. Lincoln chimes in with this smug look on his face about how I'm covered in grease like some pathetic mechanic. The way they were looking at me, you'd think changing your own oil was something to be ashamed of. Dad pulls out these papers from his suit jacket and literally throws them at my feet, getting them dirty on the driveway. He tells me to sign them now, that I'm giving up any claim to the family business. When I ask what the hell this is about, Lincoln kicks my toolbox, sending wrenches and sockets scattering across the concrete. He tells me he's already moved into my old office and threw my things in the dumpster. Dad gets right in my face saying I have until midnight to sign or they're disowning me completely. No family, no help, nothing. Then he drops the bomb that Mom already agreed. She can't stand looking at me anymore. That actually hurt because Mom and I have always been close. Lincoln couldn't help twisting the knife, bringing up my ex-wife Ashley saying she left me for a real man, someone who actually matters. They both get back in the car, and Dad shouts about my midnight deadline as they speed off. I just stood there for a minute trying to process what happened. Then I actually smiled and wiped the grease off my hands. They have no idea what I've been working on these past 8 months. See, what my family doesn't know is that while I was at the company, I developed 3 key innovations that would revolutionize our main product line. I didn't tell anyone about them because every time I brought up new ideas, Lincoln would shut me down, then secretly research them himself and try to take credit. So this time, I kept quiet, worked on the prototypes at home, and filed the patents under my own name, not the company's. The real kicker: last month I got approached by our biggest competitor with an offer to buy my patents. They've been trying to break into our market segment for years. I hadn't given them an answer yet because despite everything, I still felt some loyalty to the family business. The reason Dad and Lincoln suddenly want me out? One of their contacts at the patent office must have tipped them off about my filings. They realized what I've done, but don't know about the competitor's offer. They think if they can force me to sign away my rights to the business, my patents would belong to the company. After they left, I called Mom to see if she really agreed to this. She was confused at first, then admitted Dad told her I was trying to sabotage the company and she needed to back him up. Classic dad manipulation. She started crying when I explained my side, saying she didn't know what to believe anymore. I'm not signing those papers. Actually, I'm doing something else entirely. I called my lawyer, who's been helping me with the patents, and told him to contact the competitor with my terms. I'll sell them exclusive rights to my innovations, but only if they guarantee me a 5-year consulting contract. Then I called the family business's 3 biggest clients and hinted that they might want to hold off on placing their annual orders next week because there are exciting industry developments coming. My phone's been blowing up all day with texts from Lincoln and calls from Dad. I'm not answering. They don't know that I know exactly how overextended the company is right now. Dad took out massive loans for that new facility last year, and they're counting on next week's client orders to make the payments. It's 9 p.m. now, 3 hours until their deadline. I'm actually sitting in my kitchen finalizing the deal with the competitor over email. Once I hit send, our family business loses its competitive edge. Those clients will likely delay their orders and Dad's house of cards starts tumbling down. I'm not doing this just because they were assholes today. This is about years of being treated like I don't matter, having my ideas stolen, being pushed aside for Lincoln, who only got his position because he's Dad's yes man. The divorce was the last straw. Ashley left because she couldn't handle the constant family drama and how depressed I was becoming. I don't blame her anymore. So yeah, I'm about to hit send on this email. I wonder what messages I'll have waiting for me at 11:47 p.m. when they realize what I've done. Update 1. Things have escalated big time in the last 24 hours, and I'm still processing everything that's happened. So last night at exactly 11:42 p.m., yeah, I remember the exact time because I was watching it tick down on my phone, I hit send on that email to our competitor, finalizing the deal to sell my patents. I got an automated response saying the contracts were received and their legal team would process everything first thing in the morning. I honestly felt nothing at first, no satisfaction, no guilt, just this weird emptiness. Then, I cracked open a beer and waited. At 11:47 p.m., exactly like I predicted, my phone exploded. First came a text from my dad in all caps. "What the F asterisk CK did you do? Answer me now!" Then Lincoln, "Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything." And finally my mom, "Son, we're sorry. Please pick up. We didn't mean it." I didn't respond to any of them, just silenced my phone and went to bed. Slept like a baby for the first time in months. This morning I woke up to 27 missed calls and a bunch of voicemails. Most were just my dad yelling or my brother panicking. But the last one from my mom actually made me pause. She was crying, saying she had no idea what was happening, but Dad and Lincoln were completely falling apart and something about an emergency board meeting. While I was listening to the messages, my uncle Walter called. He's my dad's younger brother who sits on the company board, but isn't involved in day-to-day operations. He asked what the hell was going on because he just got an email about an emergency meeting and something about intellectual property crisis. I explained everything, the patents, the competitor's offer, how Dad and Lincoln came to my house yesterday. Walter was quiet for a minute, then told me something I never knew. Apparently, when my grandfather started the company, he actually wanted it to go to Walter eventually, not my dad. But my dad manipulated things, convinced my grandfather that Walter wasn't tough enough to run the business. My dad has basically been terrified his whole life that someone will take his company away from him. That's why he's always been so controlling with me and Lincoln. After talking with Walter, I decided to drive over to the office, not to cave, but to see their faces. When I walked in, the receptionist's eyes went wide like she was seeing a ghost. Before she could even call upstairs, I heard shouting coming from the conference room. I walked right in and everyone just stopped mid-sentence. Dad was standing at the head of the table, face red, tie loosened. Lincoln looked like he hadn't slept at all. 3 board members were there, including Walter, plus some guy in a suit I didn't recognize. Dad immediately started toward me, pointing and yelling that I was trying to destroy everything our family built. I just stayed calm and asked who the stranger was. Turns out he was from the bank that financed the new facility. Lincoln tried to grab my arm, asking what I'd done, saying clients were calling to delay orders and the competitor was announcing a major acquisition this afternoon. I pulled away from him and told everyone exactly what I'd done, sold my patents that I developed and filed under my name to a competitor who actually values my work. Dad slammed his fist on the table, knocking over a coffee cup. He started bringing up how much money they spent on my education, how I owed everything to him. That's when I lost it. I told him I worked 80-hour weeks for 5 years straight developing new products while he and Lincoln took all the credit. I reminded him how last year when I proposed updating our main product line, he called my ideas worthless garbage in front of the entire staff. When I brought up concrete evidence that our market share was shrinking because our products were becoming outdated, Lincoln actually laughed at me in the quarterly meeting. The bank guy asked if there was any way to stop the patent sale. I said it was already done, signed and processed. Dad looked like he was about to have a stroke. He tried a different approach, suddenly talking about family loyalty and how we could work something out. Classic Dad. When bullying doesn't work, he switches to manipulation. I just laughed and told him his midnight deadline had passed. Then I dropped the other bomb. I'd also negotiated an exclusive consulting contract with a competitor. I'm going to be helping them implement my innovations to directly compete with our family business. Lincoln actually lunged at me then. He grabbed my shirt and shoved me against the wall, screaming in my face about betrayal. Walter and one of the board members had to pull him off. The bank guy just picked up his papers and left, saying he'd be in touch about reassessing the loan terms. As I was leaving, my mom called again. She was at home crying, asking what was happening. I finally answered and tried to explain, but she kept saying I was breaking up the family. That hurt, not gonna lie. But then she said something that made everything click. She told me I was just like my father, always putting business before family. That's when I realized they've always seen me as a threat. Dad thought I was trying to take over his company just like he took it from his father and uncle. He's been sabotaging my ideas and keeping me down because he's afraid of being replaced. Lincoln followed his lead because he's always been Dad's puppet, trying to earn his approval. I'm back home now. The competitor's announcement just went live. They're launching a new product line based on my innovations that will revolutionize the industry. My phone is blowing up again. Dad's texts have switched from anger to desperation, offering me a full partnership and creative control. Lincoln is alternating between threatening me and begging me to fix this. My Aunt Julia, Mom's sister, just called to say Dad showed up at her house looking for me, completely unhinged. She told him to leave or she'd call the police. I'm not backing down. The company will probably survive, but they'll take a massive hit. That new facility might end up being sold before it's even finished. Dad might have to step down if the board loses confidence in him. And Lincoln? Without Dad's protection, everyone will finally see how incompetent he really is. Walter just texted asking if we could meet for dinner tonight. Says he has some interesting documents about the original company ownership that I might want to see. This isn't over yet, not by a long shot. Update 2. Hey Reddit. Back again with another update because holy shit things have gotten wild. After my dinner with Uncle Walter last night, everything's imploding faster than I could have imagined. So I met Walter at this steakhouse across town. Figured it was safer than going somewhere my dad might show up. When I got there, Walter was already at a corner table with a manila folder in front of him. He looked nervous AF, kept checking his phone every few minutes. Before we even ordered drinks, he slid the folder over to me. Inside were the original company documents from when my grandfather started the business. But here's the kicker. The company wasn't supposed to be just my dad's. The original agreement was a three-way split between my dad, Walter, and their sister, my Aunt Celeste, who moved to Arizona years ago. But over time, Dad somehow got both Walter and Celeste to sign over portions of their shares. Walter kept some token ownership, hence his board seat, but he got pushed out of any real decision-making. What really got me was this letter from my grandfather to all three of his kids, written like a month before he died. He basically said he was disappointed in how my dad had taken over everything and pushed his siblings aside. He specifically mentioned hoping that the next generation might restore the balance, meaning me and my cousins. I asked Walter why he never showed me this before. He just stared at his whiskey for a minute before admitting he was scared of my dad. Said Dad had threatened to expose some old tax issue that could have gotten Walter in trouble if he ever tried to challenge him. Classic dad move. While we were talking, Walter's phone kept lighting up with texts. Turns out the board called an emergency session for tomorrow morning. Two of our biggest clients had officially postponed their orders after the competitor's announcement about my patents. The bank was getting nervous about the loans for the new facility. I got home around 11 to find my mom sitting in her car in my driveway. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I almost felt bad for her until she started in about how I needed to fix this mess before Dad does something drastic. I asked her point blank if she really told Dad she couldn't stand looking at me anymore. She started crying, saying Dad told her to say that he was just trying to pressure me. I told her I wasn't fixing anything. She grabbed my arm, digging her nails in, saying I didn't understand what I was doing to the family. I pulled away and told her she didn't understand what they'd been doing to me for years. She left sobbing, which honestly sucked, but I'm done being manipulated. This morning I woke up to an email from Lincoln. He actually apologized for kicking my toolbox and some of the things he said. Then came the real reason for his message. He wanted to know if there was any way to undo the patent sale, because the board was talking about forcing Dad to step down. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I went to check on my Subaru, because I'd left the oil change unfinished after all the drama. When I opened my garage, I found the driver's side window smashed and my toolbox gone. Not hard to guess who did it. I called the police to file a report, mostly to have documentation. While the officer was still there taking my statement, my phone rang. It was our family lawyer asking if I could come to the office ASAP for an urgent matter regarding company ownership. I told him I wasn't going anywhere near that office again after Lincoln's physical attack yesterday. The lawyer sounded surprised about the attack. Guess Dad and Lincoln didn't mention that part. He suggested meeting at his office instead. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I got to the lawyer's office, I immediately regretted it. Dad was there looking completely wrecked. His eyes were bloodshot, hair a mess, suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. The lawyer seemed uncomfortable, sitting at his desk with a stack of papers. Dad immediately started with his fake remorse routine, saying he'd been under tremendous pressure, that he never meant those things he said. I just stood there with my arms crossed, waiting for the real reason they called me in. Finally, the lawyer explained that the board was meeting tomorrow to discuss leadership transition options, and Dad wanted to propose a compromise. Dad pushed a document across the desk, a new ownership structure that would give me 30% of the company and a seat on the board. I laughed out loud. I told them it was way too late for that, and besides, I'd already signed an exclusive consulting contract with the competitor. Dad completely lost it. He flipped the lawyer's coffee table, sending papers flying everywhere. He got right in my face, screaming that I was destroying his life's work. The lawyer had to physically step between us. I left them both standing there and went straight to Uncle Walter's house to tell him what happened. While I was there, Walter got a call from the board chairman. Apparently, one of our suppliers found out about the patent situation and was threatening to cancel our preferred vendor status since our competitive advantage was now compromised. Walter put the call on speaker so I could hear. The chairman asked Walter if he'd be willing to step in temporarily if the board voted to suspend Dad. Walter looked at me with this weird mix of fear and hope in his eyes before saying he'd consider it. After the call, Walter told me something that blew my mind. Turns out the new facility that Dad took out those massive loans for, it wasn't even necessary. The company had plenty of manufacturing capacity, but Dad was obsessed with expanding because our main competitor, the one who bought my patents, had just built a new headquarters. It was all about his ego. I was still at Walter's when my phone buzzed with a text from my cousin, Walter's son. He sent a video of Dad showing up at the competitor's office building, yelling in the lobby about how they stole his son and his intellectual property. Security had to escort him out. The video was already making rounds among employees at our company. Just as I was leaving Walter's house, Lincoln called. When I didn't answer, he'd left a voicemail saying Mom was really upset and had taken some pills. I immediately called Mom's sister Julia to check on her. Julia drove over to my parents' house and found Mom asleep, but fine. She'd just taken her regular anxiety medication. Another manipulation tactic from Lincoln. I'm now sitting in my kitchen, looking at the documents Walter gave me, and wondering what tomorrow's board meeting will bring. The competitor's CEO emailed to confirm my start date next week. Dad's lawyer called twice more, ignored both calls. 3 employees from the family business connected with me on LinkedIn in the last hour. Whatever happens tomorrow, there's no going back. The company my grandfather built is fundamentally changing, and honestly, it needed to. The way Dad ran things, the bullying, the ego, the fear. That's not what my grandfather wanted. I don't know if I'll ever forgive them for how they treated me. But watching everything unravel? I won't lie, it feels pretty damn satisfying. Tomorrow's board meeting is at 9. Walter says he'll call me right after with the results. I'm turning my phone off tonight and getting some actual sleep for once. Final update. All right, Reddit. Final update on this whole insane family business saga. I didn't think things could get more intense than they already were, but the last 48 hours have been absolutely wild. I'm still processing everything that's happened. So yesterday morning, I woke up to a missed call from Walter at 8:47 a.m. He left a voicemail saying he was heading into the board meeting and would call me after. I tried to distract myself by fixing my Subaru's broken window. Thanks again, Lincoln. But I couldn't focus for shit. Around 11:30, Walter finally called. His voice sounded weird, like he couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. The board meeting had turned into a complete shit show. Apparently, Dad showed up looking like death and immediately started ranting about how I'd sabotaged the company. When the board chairman tried to get things back on track, Dad actually threw a coffee mug against the wall. Then the real bomb dropped. The bank representative showed up unannounced to inform them that they were freezing the construction loan for the new facility, pending a reassessment of the company's financial stability. Dad completely lost it, screaming at everyone that this was all a conspiracy against him. The board voted unanimously to place him on immediate administrative leave. They asked Walter to step in as interim leader. While Walter was still on the phone with me, he got a text from the office manager. Dad had gone back to the office after the meeting and was refusing to leave his office, telling everyone who came near that they were fired. Walter had to hang up to deal with that mess. I spent the rest of the day fielding texts from random employees asking what the hell was happening. Even got a message from Ashley, my ex-wife, who'd heard about the drama through mutual friends. She actually seemed concerned, which was weird after all the shit Lincoln said about her leaving me for a real man. Around 6 p.m., Lincoln showed up at my house. I didn't answer the door, just watched through the window as he paced back and forth on my porch for like 20 minutes, alternating between looking like he wanted to break something and like he was about to cry. He finally left a manila envelope in my mailbox and drove off. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note that just said, "You should see this." I was hesitant to plug a random drive into my computer, not an idiot, so I used my old laptop that doesn't have any important data on it. The drive contained a single video file, footage from what looked like a company meeting from about a year ago. It showed Dad and Lincoln in the conference room with 3 board members. They were discussing my product proposals, the ones they'd shot down repeatedly in official meetings. But here, Dad was actually praising my ideas, saying they were exactly what the company needs to stay competitive. Then he laid out his real plan. They'd reject my proposals publicly, wait for me to get frustrated and leave, then implement all my ideas themselves after I was gone. Lincoln was nodding along the whole time like the good little puppet he is. One board member asked if that was ethical. Dad laughed and said I was too soft to run the business anyway, that I didn't have what it takes to make tough decisions. He said keeping me around would just hold the company back because I was too interested in innovation and not enough in maximizing profits. I was fucking livid watching this. All those times they humiliated me in meetings, shot down my ideas in front of everyone. It was all a setup to push me out while stealing my work. The only reason their plan failed was because I'd filed those patents privately. I texted Lincoln, "Got your video? Where did you get this?" He responded immediately. "Dad's executive assistant recorded all his meetings. I found the archive when I moved into your old office. There's more. A lot more." This morning, I met Walter for coffee before he headed to the office. He looked simultaneously exhausted and energized, if that makes sense. He told me Dad had finally been escorted from the building yesterday evening after threatening to sue everyone. The company's legal team was already drafting a response to potential litigation. Walter slid a folder across the table. The preliminary assessment of the company's situation. It was worse than I thought. Without my patents and with the delayed client orders, they were looking at a potential 30% drop in revenue over the next quarter. The bank was considering calling in the construction loan early, which would basically bankrupt the company unless they found emergency financing. I asked Walter why Lincoln had suddenly decided to share that video with me. Walter wasn't surprised. Apparently, Lincoln had a complete breakdown yesterday after the board meeting. He'd confessed to Walter that Dad had been manipulating him for years, convincing him that I was trying to take over the company and push him out. Lincoln had believed it because Dad had been feeding him that narrative since we were kids. Around noon, my mom called. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She said Dad hadn't come home last night, that he was threatening to end it all, because everything he'd built was being taken away. I told her to call the police if she was worried about him. She got angry, saying I didn't care about family anymore. I hung up. An hour later, Dad himself called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice was eerily calm as he asked me to meet him at the house to talk things through like adults. I refused. He immediately switched to threatening me, saying he'd make me regret what I'd done. I recorded the whole call. I sent the recording to Walter and our family lawyer, then filed another police report about the threats. The officer who took my statement recognized my name from the previous report about my car. He suggested I might want to consider a restraining order, which feels surreal when you're talking about your own father. Late this afternoon, I got an email from the competitor's CEO. They're already implementing my innovations and have scheduled a major industry presentation for next month. They want me front and center as the visionary behind the breakthrough. The contrast between how they're treating me and how my family treated me couldn't be more stark. Around 5 p.m., Walter called with news that made everything finally click into place. The board had ordered a complete audit of the company finances and discovered that Dad had been siphoning money into a personal account for years. Not huge amounts, but enough to fund a secret side project. He'd been quietly developing a competing product line with plans to launch his own company once he officially retired from the family business. That's why he was so desperate to get me to sign away my rights and why he freaked out when the competitor announced buying my patents. His entire backup plan depended on being the only one with innovative designs. So those desperate messages that blew up my phone at 11:47 p.m. after I sent the email to the competitor? Now I understand exactly what happened. Dad must have gotten word from his contact at the patent office that the sale had gone through. He realized his side project was dead in the water. The company was in trouble and his whole house of cards was collapsing. Lincoln must have been in full panic mode when Dad told him about the financial mess they were in. And Mom? She was probably just reacting to Dad and Lincoln melting down without knowing the full story. Walter says the board is meeting again tomorrow to discuss restructuring options. They've already approached me about potentially buying back limited rights to my patents. Not exclusive rights, just enough to keep their existing clients. I haven't decided what I'll do yet. One thing's for sure, I'm not interested in reconciliation. Dad built his entire business and parenting style on manipulation, lies, and intimidation. Lincoln chose to be his accomplice. Mom enabled it all. They only reached out when their scheme fell apart, not because they actually cared about me. My consulting job with the competitor starts next week. I'm meeting with their legal team tomorrow to discuss how to handle the family business's request without compromising our agreement. It's weird looking back at that moment in my driveway when they threw those papers at my feet and kicked my toolbox. They thought I was some pathetic loser they could bully one last time. They had no idea I was holding all the cards. The grease-covered mechanic they mocked, he just brought down their entire empire.